Welcome, welcome, welcome to another Planning Phase Syndicate. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This is episode 42. Many of the truths that we cling to depend on our point of view. Tonight, we're going to be discussing scenarios and the list building aspects that go along with them. So I have probably, 20 different lists that we can go through. And what we're going to do is we're going to break down a little bit about each of the different scenarios, talks about pros and cons of the different scenarios in terms of how you can win them. And then we're going to talk a little bit about list building and how it affects each of the different style of objective play. Joining me tonight will be my good friend from Brew Squadron, Cory. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have other people on the show. We don't get guests on all the time. Joining me in the corner where he will say nothing but just have an image is Mr. JJ. JJ had to run out of state. So I thought we put his lovely face on there, but I don't have a picture of Charles to put out there. So I can't put the other picture of Charles. Charles is unfortunately unable to make it tonight either. So it'll be Cory and I running the helm tonight. So thank you again, Cory, for stepping in and joining me. Hopefully your weekend was filled with joy and maybe a little bit of X-Wing play.
I wish. So yeah. Good on the joy part, not low on the X-Wing. So
yeah, I had a lot less X-Wing time this weekend than I did during the week. So I've been able to I think I've gotten between our local league and my online games, I think I've gotten about 5 or 6 objective games in. And I feel that's pretty good for a week. You get no hat, JJ. You weren't wearing it when I took that picture on purpose. Anyway, so I feel I'm getting a little bit more of a feel for the scenarios, and I'm moving into maybe some of the faster play than we've seen before. Now, if you've listened to Gold Squadron, they kind of broke down a little bit. Ryan kind of talked a little bit of actually why he feels some of these scenario plays feel like they're faster, but they're not quite as fast as maybe we're used to, right? And I think that's really interesting, and we're going to go over those here in a few minutes. Just to make sure we go ahead and represent the squad, Cory and I are from Brew Squadron, so if you're local to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and you want to join our local pray group, that we pray about X-Wing every week. Not really, but if you want to join our local group, we play every Monday night on the west side of the state at Gamers Wharf in Granville. So you're all welcome to join us for that as well.
I will say there's lots of different mix of skill levels, which is one thing that's been really nice. We've got some really highly competitive players, but we also have some people, this is their first, they just started playing recently. So it's kind of nice to have that mix for different people.
Yep, and I will say for our first 2.5 actual league night, which we're not really doing a league, I guess I call it league because it lets me get away with more with the wife. But but we actually had almost a record turnout, I think, since 2.0 started. So we'll just say kudos to AMG for getting everybody interested. So hopefully that's what a lot of it was. But we had at least 3 new players that I've never personally seen before show up. And now I have to bring my third bat to make sure we have enough bats now.
Yeah.
That's how many people we had there this week. So it was awesome. It was fun. Getting together in person is a lot more fun than playing online. Even though I do enjoy all your smiling faces. So not JJ's. JJ's not smiling, right, JJ? No smile for you today.
Yeah, I don't see a smile on his face.
No, it's probably because I got he wasn't wearing his giant hat, I think, when we recorded last week. So either which way. So Cory, what I want to do to begin with is you could tell everybody a little bit about yourself, just in case anybody wants to know who you are. But what I want to get into right away is talking about the different types of scenarios, right? And I want to talk about the new objectives and the different styles format. And what I want you to do is kind of introduce yourself a little bit and then kind of give your overall thoughts on scenario play and kind of some of the directions that they're heading in X-Wing.
Sure. So I've been playing since 1.0, back in the day when I think I started around when the Hawk came out. So a lot of years playing X-Wing, and been doing competitive X-Wing quite a bit. I think the first year even I started playing, I was doing competitive. So definitely think that way. And I'd say me personally, I think I enjoy list building and planning as well as I do actually playing the game. So definitely one of my, I feel like is one of my strong suits, but it's definitely one of the things that at least I enjoy the most, or enjoy a lot. So so with all these changes, it's been just fantastic for me, being able to jump in and like recreate things, rethink about what I'm doing for lists. And so the objectives have certainly added a nice wrinkle to that. Um, and so, it's kind of changed how I go about building my lists, in that I'm typically, 4 is kind of my minimum ship count right now, but I'm typically looking at a 5 ship list. And most of the time trying to figure out how do I get extra actions, or how do I get protection when I'm taking, an action that is more objective focused or something like that. So those are the kind of the key things I'm looking at. And I've also started to look at really valuing mobility as well as extra actions, as being 2 key things that I've started to think about in my list building, as opposed to just pure alpha strike or pure beef or whatever. So um, that's kind of where I jump in. So
Yeah, and I think that's fair, and I think that's one of the as we talk through these objectives. So this is the new rules; these are where they're going to go. I will say one of the positive things that I've noticed from or from AMG is that they've been jumping in a few of the streams,
mm-hmm.
where we have not seen that out of them or even FFG in the past. But
Correct.
I think on a positive side, right, it means they're paying attention. I really don't care for their PR approach in any way, shape, or form. I don't think that I don't understand. I don't agree with their approach and how they handle those things. But I will say, at minimum, we're getting them in the streams. They've been in the Hexile chat at least once or twice now that I've seen. They've been on the GSP streams. I've definitely seen. Maybe someday they'll show up on our streams. AMG. But like so on a positive side, it's been nice to see that there's an engagement, and that they seem to want to care about these changes that they've made. Because if they let's be honest, if they didn't care, they wouldn't be jumping in at all. They just keep moving on with their life. And I don't know if you feel the same way, Cory, but that's kind of the attitude I feel I've gotten out of when they've jumped into the streams more often than not.
Yeah. No, I've definitely taken it as a very positive note, with them jumping in and actually taking part. It is pretty interesting with the whole licensing thing that they are, I guess, acknowledging that online streaming does exist, in on a digital side of things. So that's kind of an interesting turn. I always wondered if FFG wasn't because they weren't supposed to acknowledge that it exists. So with AMG jumping in, it's kind of interesting that's of that route, that side of things. So
yeah, and I will say it's not like they stay and hang out for the whole 2, 3,
mm-hmm.
4 hours. But I
Right.
mean, the appearances that they've helped make a few rule corrections that we've seen, and so those are always nice to have. And I will say even though they were doing a Legion stream last week, they answered all the X-Wing questions. So either the X-Wing community is that much more loud than Legion community is, or they're actually going out of their way to take the time to address some of the concerns that we'll just say as the community we've expressed with the not acknowledging us, not giving us communication until recently.
Sure.
So it feels like there's more of a change there. So
Real quick, JJ
yeah.
just posted something about my, I think it was towards me, about converting my list or starting fresh. So just jumping back there, I typically just erased everything, but picked a couple pilots that I like to start with, and then built my list kind of fresh, but with those new pilots in mind, just to answer that question. So like for Resistance, I love Snap, Wexley. I like ZZ. Those are 2 of my favorite ships. And so generally those two are in most of my lists because they do the things I want for the objectives I'm looking at, as well as they're just really fun to fly. So that's usually where I start with, is picking a couple pilots that mean something to me, because I also have a hint of theme and kind of who am I flying. I can't put all ships on the board that I don't care about. Usually my rule is if I like the ship or like the pilot, then I'm okay with putting it on the board. So at least most of them. So sorry to cut you off.
No, that's great. No, and I think that's a good question, JJ, because I will be honest, I was the exact opposite. I mean, I did a little bit of the same thing where I took if I'm going to play Separatists, I typically take Grievous or Watt. And I've been more on a Watt kick than anything else. And when I was trying to build out Separatists, that was one of the larger, caveats. And I think that's why I wanted to have this discussion, especially with somebody else, because as we go through and start list building and looking at objectives, right? Everybody's building these 6, 7, 8 ship lists all the time. And I don't, it feels like that's the only way to win. But I lost on stream to Greg. I don't know if Greg's here tonight, but I lost to Greg on stream and he had a 3 ship list, and we didn't play Chance Encounter. So it was on a Chance Encounter list. So, but again, I think that's like one of the more important things. I did the exact opposite of Cory. I tried to take my list and make them work. And when they stopped working for me, I got frustrated and decided to start picking something new, which has forced me to play a different style than I've played before. Everyone loses to Greg. Fair enough. I'm happy to lose to Greg anytime, especially because I get to go on his stream and then he gets to make fun of me on stream while I lose to somebody else. But I think it's pushed me into a different direction of how do I want to list build. All right, so let's dig into the scenario. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each scenario. I'm not going to read all of the text. I don't feel at this point we need to, unless Cory feels we need to read all the text. Oh. I think we're pretty good at this point with that. But what I wanted to do is talk a little bit about each of the different styles of play and then kind of get into some of the, like I said, some of the pros and cons of how these scenarios are going to interact, what some of the win conditions will be, and where we feel maybe some of the lists will shake out, if that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Scramble the transmission is the first objective or mission. I don't know, what do we call these, missions or do we call them objectives? Is that like, what is the terminology AMG is using?
Is it scenarios?
All right, so we call it a scenario. So every time I say mission or objective, your goal is to say, no, that's a scenario, Chris. You got to correct me every time.
Well, I think on the top they say mission objective, so I who knows? So I think we're good.
All right, so the first one is where we set up essentially 4 satellites. There's 5, but the one in the middle is always in the middle. That one never ever changes. And essentially you set up the different satellites and you have to deny enemy forces that information, right? So what happens at the start of the game, each player earns mission points for the opponent's deficit, which I think we all know deficit scoring is a thing, right? You earn 1 mission point for each satellite that you control. The player whose marker is on each satellite controls that objective. So essentially your goal is to fly next to a satellite, take an action, a white action, to grab that satellite. It becomes yours. It becomes yours until I believe somebody else takes it from you. So, with that in mind, you have the ability to place these in kind of the different quadrants, right? You get to place one, then your opponent gets to place one, then you have to place one on your opponent's side, and then your opponent has to place one on your side. Here's where the objectives and all these missions are changing, not only just the list building, but how we fly, right? Because originally before, you had time to set up. Now people are going in and taking 3 objectives, 3 of these mission points round 1, right? And if you aren't careful, you get behind. That's a fact. Which is designed to help get the game to engage faster, which I actually don't disagree with. At first, I didn't like it, but now I don't mind it because it doesn't force me to have to spend a bunch of time trying to outmaneuver you. And if you're really aggressive, and let's say I'm running a Grievous list and I separate Grievous, you're either going in all in on Grievous or splitting your squad or doing something. And Grievous usually still makes out, especially now that he gets free Soul Swan and free Impervium plating. just stapled on him. So Cory, what has been your experience with this specific scenario?
Yeah, I mean, I think the chat is also hitting it too. That Jedi are definitely anything with Force is pretty huge in the game. There's a couple things, a couple TIE fighters, like the one is it Night Beast that gets to do a focus after a blue. Could be pretty interesting for grabbing, an objective. So the trick with that center one, there's obviously two that are easy to get, and there's one in the center that you're kind of like, it almost feels like a game of chicken, right? Like who's going to go up there and grab it? Low initiative actually is pretty key in that one. Like I use Merle in the A-Wing is pretty fantastic with Heroic, because at least he's got some kind of, I guess, feeling of defense for going up there and grabbing it, and they're fast. So that's one of the things. But you also have to think about the other side, that your opponent could actually charge into that spot. And if you're tokenless, their whole list could take, pot shots at that one ship and potentially kill it, which I'd be quite happy to let someone take an objective if I can kill their ship. So that's something just to be considered. But it is kind of an interesting startup of not only, are you going to go for that center objective, which is kind of the one that's in contention, but also placing obstacles, right? So I've started thinking there's two ways to set up obstacles now. So you can set it up so that you're the traditional way of, trying to set up obstacles to help your list in combat, but you can also set up obstacles to help defend the objectives or make it more difficult for your opponent. I think I've seen a lot more heavily clustered obstacles than I've seen in the past, where people are sticking a whole bunch of big obstacles in the center, and it makes it really difficult to kind of maneuver through that when you're grabbing your objectives. So it is kind of an interesting one. I do like this objective. I don't feel like I feel like it's there's a lot of risk reward in there, and I think that's pretty interesting. That's one of the things I think about the most with this one, is that risk of running up there and do I take it, do I not? And I think it depends on firepower and what's coming in and what are the consequences of losing that action to grabbing that objective.
Yeah, and I would say with this one, Jedis are probably one of the higher, better ships for this list, because you get a passive mod. Now, I will say any list that you could take elusive on, especially if you're in the beginning salvos, any list that has elusive is a very amazing cheap upgrade for 2 points.
Right.
Like it's insane the amount that you get out of elusive now compared to what before. It's when remember when Crackshot was like what 1 point or whatever, and everybody was taking Crackshot. If elusive was ever any cheaper, all we'd see is elusive. And I think with all the open spots, elusive is huge, or is highly beneficial. Ships that provide rerolls for you in this scenario is pretty amazing. Lone Wolf, if you have a smaller ship list in this scenario, is amazing. Getting that free reroll, but really Jedi is just kind of anything with Force. There you go. It doesn't have to be a Jedi. It could be a fire spray with Force.
The other thing I've seen too, to go with that though, to kind of combat that, is coordinating. So one of the lists I started off with was a couple T-70s, a couple A-Wings, and Rose. And that was kind of interesting. I need to get better with the list, but having a coordinator out there that can give you that extra action to grab a objective is also pretty awesome. Set you up, give your ship a focus, and then your ship jumps in there, and if they're in range, they grab the objective. So that one's another great option. So looking at every ship, every faction has coordinating. So thinking about keeping one that's in the back and help your squad out. So
Yeah, JJ asks, and I guess I'll get your opinion. Do you think Han is able to re-roll? Is he able to use his pilot ability to get re-rolls because he's by an obstacle for stealing one of the satellites?
I mean, he gets his rerolls for even going over obstacles, right? For rolling for damage, if I'm not mistaken. So I would say yes. He gets it for anything except for the road roll.
Yep. So then I would wager if that is how they rule it, that will change in the future in terms of being able to roll for that objective. Because that kind of seems, it's kind of similar to like when we had Dooku being able to roll your bomb hits, or Dooku, oh, I'm just going to YOLO through an obstacle. To me, it seems counterproductive to allow Han to re-roll that objective one. I don't mind the obstacle aspect, right? You know, like that piece I don't mind. It's the re-rolling that objective dice seems that will be something that, if they have not already condemned, will be looked at pretty quick.
So I did see a stream though where somebody asked about Han and they just gave a smirk and they kind of just glossed over that. Like there was, I don't know what came of that. Maybe somebody else caught if anything else was said, but it gave me the feeling there's some inter discussions about some people wanting Han to keep his ability for everything and others not, was how I took it. But I didn't see anything that showed me that they were going to be changing that anytime soon. So, which is incredibly frustrating. Han can be a very negative play experience if you're playing against him and he's rolling hot. So,
yep. All right. So anything else on scrambling the transmissions before we move to the next one?
I don't think so.
All right. So the next scenario that I have is the salvage mission. Your goal is to retrieve as many supply crates as possible before your enemy. Essentially, it's the same thing. There's 5 supply crate caches. And essentially what will happen is you go fly, you take an action to pick up your supply crate, and then you can fly away with it. If somebody crits you, and this is very important, if somebody crits you, you drop your supply crate. At the end of the round, whatever supply crates you have left, you get to score 1 mission point for. Then, on top of that, you are not able to do advanced maneuvers. And this is where they did a clarification this week, actually, I think Thursday. I think it was Thursday. They added a whole bunch of information in there about what you can do while you have a supply crate. So essentially what they originally had is if you were to have a supply crate, you would not be able to do an advanced maneuver. So then what came up is the question of, well, if I do an advanced maneuver, I just can jettison my supply crate, right? Leave it for somebody else. If I'm an I-6, who cares? I'm going to do my jettison, and the next turn you try to pick it up, and I'm just going to crit you and go attack you. So they clarified it to essentially say that when you do that, you would not do the advanced maneuver, except for in a couple of scenarios. For the most part, you would not be able to do your advanced maneuver, and you would just do a 2 white forward stress maneuver, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It was basically the same thing as being stressed and then trying to do a 4K while you're stressed. Unless you're a defender, then, whatever. That's a different discussion. But the only difference is like, I think the repulsor lifts are the ones that is affected. So if you use your repulsor lifts on an HP, you flip your card, right? You pick up your supply crate. If you do the churn maneuver, you have to jettison it. It's not even an option at that point. And instead of forcing you to do the 2 white straight, would be very unfair for that type of a ship, because it's not something that you have the ability at this current time to do. Now, that doesn't mean in the future they might errata those the text on those cards, but for now that's kind of how they've ruled that. Yeah, oops, my cargo slipped. Yeah, essentially. Droids shouldn't be carrying cargo anyway. What the heck? They're not that good.
Yeah, one thing that's made me look at is that with all the new loadouts, you can put stuff on like first order, for instance, like pattern analyzer or on resistance, which I fly. But because of that ruling of how that works, I've since removed my pattern analyzers just because I'm worried in an event, even though I play competitively, um, only one of the four objectives that comes into play and is a negative thing. And I think you could really screw yourself up pretty heavy if you kind of rely on those advanced maneuvers and then all of a sudden you get the cargo objective and you can just get hosed. So that's one of the things I've kind of done to really make me think about those advanced maneuvers. Do I really need to do them? So
Yep. And I think what it does is it prevents you from taking that cargo and turning around and trying to kill your enemy, right? Like it's this this scenario actually feels as the closest to dogfighting out of all four of them. Okay, I'm sorry, minus chance engagement, whatever. That one, your chance engagement is dogfight, but this is out of the other all three of them. This feels the closest to dogfighting because there is only 5 points that you can score, right? By getting caches, you can only have one cache per ship, and you are essentially forcing your opponent to, kind of make the decision who wants the caches. Do we both want caches, and then how are we going to attack? And I'll use the example I had was when I played against 2 defenders and 2 TIE fighters. One of the 2 TIE fighters went and picked up the caches on their side of the board and just turtled on that side, right? And then they had the defenders come in and attack my HMPs. Well, I sent my Grievous. After a while, I was like, he's not going to engage with me with those little TIE defenders. So I sent Grievous in. Well, you know what Grievous does to a TIE defender? Or I'm sorry, not a TIE defender, a TIE fighter. Within 2 turns, that TIE fighter is no more. No questions asked. Like it, especially when it's looking the other way. it can't do a 3K to turn around. It's got to run from you. And TIEs are not known for their maneuverability, especially at I2. So,
see, for me, my experience, it's interesting that you say that, Chris, because my experience is actually the opposite. I guess it depends on what you're flying or what ships you have, but for me, the crate one actually is very low on the dogfighting because I've seen either myself, like I had Murrow grab one, and I just ran. I turned his butt gun to the back, just took pot shots at people, but he just went as fast as possible to get away from everybody, and so he really wasn't engaging. And so I think it depends on the list that you're playing against, and that's a great thing to bring up. Is like if you've got a very defensive list that's fast and can basically get out of dodge, pick up those crates and run, and then every round, if you've got 3 of them, you're points ahead every single round. And so this one can be one of those ones that gets out of hand in that it can snowball pretty quickly, and all of a sudden you're way down in points and feel like it's hard to come back. But I do think it depends on the ship types that you've got. So
in this case, you're saying faster ships that can shoot out the front and back, or have the ability to, in some way, shape, or form, shoot out the front and back, that probably benefits them in this scenario.
I would think so. I mean, I think Resistance A-Wings, you put optics and heroic on them or something like that, and just bolt. If they can now all take hull upgrade, and so you just grab that and run, and just kind of move around the board. And it takes some really bad dice to get through the A-Wings that way.
Yeah. You want to know the other one I feel that has not been played a lot that would be beneficial in this scenario? TIE SF.
Yeah.
Because I can take missiles. Now I can take millions of missiles. I get a pilot ability now, and I can shoot missiles out my butt. No questions asked.
The only thing with that is the SFs, because of their 2 agility versus the 3, I do think it does hinder them a little bit, but they do have an amazing dial. And so I think they could be pretty strong. But I think 3 agility ships definitely have the advantage in this one. Like I said, that's where Resistance A-Wings pop in my mind as being a really strong choice for that case.
So the answer to your question, JJ, is one ship can have one cargo. Now,
Yep.
you know what would be interesting, and maybe this we'll see this feature. It would be interesting if larger base ships could carry two cargoes.
Sure.
That would actually be kind of a twist. That would be kind of cool. Like, I mean, because think about it. If a Han Solo comes flying in YT-1300, you know he can carry more than one bloody cargo. Like, that's a fact. The other thing I thought about, too, that would be interesting to see is if they start looking at affecting dials based on cargo, right? Like, maybe this is a new objective or something like that. That's a little bit different. But think about it this way. You go pick it up and, you know, your everything gets downgraded if you're a small base ship. Because now you're carrying something you're not used to carrying. You know, let's admit it. You an A-wing is not meant to carry cargo. Period. That's a that's a fact.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
the chat's talking about Rebel A-wings. I would agree. Ahsoka, you put give Ahsoka a crate, and you might as well just say, "I'm never going to get that back."
Yeah, that's
so,
very true. Unless you drop a bomb. So I have a question. If you drop a bomb and it hits a crit, they got to drop that crate, right?
Right. If you take a crit, so, and I think if you go for debris or obstacles, the same thing would happen too. I think it's when you. I don't think it specifies if a ship gives you a crit. I think it's when you take a crit. If I'm not mistaken, I guess I should look that over before I say that out loud. When a ship that has a supply cache on its card suffers a crit damage or is destroyed. So it doesn't say a ship gives it a crit. It's if it takes a crit. So anything that does that would cause that. I know for me, for instance, mag pulse missiles have gone way up in stock to me. So I've started looking for any place I can throw mag pulse on there, because if it hits, it's a guaranteed crit. Obviously, marksman is a huge one as well, and then is it R7A7 Republic droid?
Yeah.
You know, those are all, you know, huge tools to be able to get stuff through. But for me, the biggest one was mag pulse. I've always been on the edge of like, do I take concussion? Do I take mag pulse? And now it's almost a given that one, because I feel like matches you get fewer shots in. So mag pulse having the 2 charges isn't as bad, but also that guaranteed crit is just massive. So that's something I've really looked at in my list.
Yep, and I will say, depending on the type of ship, so this is where mag pulse is. This is if your ship is a high initiative ship list. I think mag pulse has a higher effect than on lower initiative lists. But and again, I'll use my defenders. I put them on an what was it, an I2? I don't know. I put them on my HMPs. So one version of my HMPs had two loadouts that had mag pulse, and I played this scenario. And guess what? They all had to drop crit, or they all had to drop their crates, because it doesn't matter. It hits a shield. Who cares? You're still right. You took a crit damage. You're dropping the crate. And then, oh, by the way, the issue is I give out my deplete and my jam. Well, if I have 2 or more ships at I2 and I give out my jam tokens, it's beneficial because it forces them to spend that token. So let's say you roll 1 eyeball. You have 3 dice. You roll 1 eyeball and 1 evade and a blank, right? A lot of times people will be like, well, I'm going to take the 1 damage no matter what, because you rolled 2 hits and a crit. I'm going to, I'm just going to go ahead and not spend my focus for next turn. Well, guess what? Now I'm giving you a jam token. Merry Christmas. And if I have another ship that can come in and shoot you, you better spend it. You know, you might as well. There's no reason not to.
Yep.
And that's the same effect on a higher initiative ship. You're throwing out those depletes. So really, in my opinion, mag pulse has gone up in stock threefold.
Mm-hmm.
And in fairness, I did used to run them. If I ran something that I didn't need protons for, I like the jam aspect of it, because I think the jam is something that is underutilized in the game. But it just is. I don't know. I agree with you. I think mag pulse should be considered because I think it has more benefits than just this scenario. The only downside to it is you just don't get the offensive output. It's like
Right.
it's like a homing missile with better effects. There you go. That's what it is.
Chat's mentioning Kylo, Midnight, Breach are all great with those. 100% agree. Fantastic. The one thing I would say is the Magpulse has got a sneaky, not this is a Magpulse chat evening, but Magpulse also has a sneaky offensive side of it in that you don't think about, in that not only does it do the crit and the deplete, which is great on high initiative, but it also, because of the jam, is removing a token or causing them to spend a token one way or another. And so any remaining ships are getting more offensive output because you're forcing that stuff through, because they can't sit on a token. They can't be like, hey, if I'm just gonna chill out here. You know that if you hit them with a mag pulse, they're going to be tokenless for the rest of the round, and that's actually pretty powerful for the rest of your list. You think about Seavor and some of those things, how important they are when they're shooting. Mag pulse is like a little Seavor missile.
So I have a quick question, just so that we can go through clarifications. So if I shoot at you with a mag pulse, right, and you're a rebel ship that can share tokens, and you get a jam token because you have no tokens, and Hera goes, oh, I want to share a focus with you. Can she share it with you? And then jam triggers.
Right.
Yep. So jam, I will be happy when they put more jam missiles, but I think this is great tech against rebels. This makes rebels go a little bit. We can accept it a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you're going to see it a lot more. I put it on a couple Jedi that can take missiles now in the deltas, which is really scary. So some sneaky stuff in there.
All right, let's go on to. We'll do chance engagement real quick, I guess. Essentially, this is dogfighting. That's what it is. There is a mission point in the center. Whoever has the most ships within range 0 to 2 scores 1 extra objective point. Otherwise, it's kill each other. I do believe they finally clarified they clarified it, so now it's rounding up. Originally it said rounding down in there. So originally you were scoring half points on a ship and you had to round down. So the first time I played this, I think we had this on stream literally the first day it came out, and we were rounding everything down, and sorry JJ, you would have been toast two rounds, at least 2 rounds sooner. if we had rounded up.
Because it used to be round down for the first half and round up for the second.
Yes.
Did that changed?
Yes.
So it's round up both?
Yes, it's now officially just round up.
Because wouldn't that make a 5-point ship worth 6 points then?
No. So what originally would happen is when you would score half points, you would get 2 points for half points.
Right.
And then you would get the remaining 3 points when you kill it.
Right.
They, in one of the chats that they were in, they said they still had to officially get back, but essentially Plumber was like, when you get half points on the ship, it wouldn't be 2, it would be 3, and then when you finish the ship off, it's going to be 5.
Oh, okay.
So that was a big difference. Now, again, they haven't updated the doc, right, per se, but that is what they were saying officially in the chat, because that was a big, to me, that was a big confusion point, right? It's because it makes it, in my opinion, it makes a difference, because if you have to round down for half points, so again, in Chance Encounter, when you half point a ship and you only got 2 out of the 5, it's a lot harder to kill that ship, to get your mission points you need. You have to keep ships on the board longer. Now, if you can round up, if people are taking 3-point ships and 5-point ships, which seem to be pretty prominent right now, now when I get my 2 points and my 3 points.
Sure.
So,
I think this mission objective with the 1 token in the center, though, I do feel like it is significant. I think the biggest thing is, this of all the things that have, I think, hurt aces. To be honest, this actually hurts aces a lot more than some of the other stuff, just because, in my opinion, just because you get a big rebel beef squad that's in the center that's just one straight to victory, and commanding that center, or even a bunch of TIE fighters that can hard one turn left and right and that kind of thing. That's near that center objective, and you're used to a list that's going to kind of toilet bowl and go around the outside. It is going to be really tough. And if you sit on that too long, those points will start adding up. When we're only talking 20, every 2 times you do that, you got 10% of the game right there. So I do think this is significant, but I think it's a good thing. I do think it creates engagements, but it is definitely, in my opinion, it hurts aces a little bit on this one.
Yeah, and if you think about your A-wings that can just shoot out the butt too, right? You can just have 2 of them circle around this thing and say, "Hey, come get me."
Mm-hmm.
Your A-wing scenario earlier matches kind of this to some extent, right? I could still use those same A-wings in this scenario and let the rest of my list go engage you or flank you, and I can leave my 2 in the center and get my objective point, and force you to come in and engage me, you know. And this is where I've had struggled more, is because I'm a very offensive player. So I'm going in to get my points, try to get in, and sometimes I get caught a little bit faster than I probably should. So
Sure.
all right, so enough on that one. The last one is assault at the satellite array. So if I have to pick, and I get, well, let's go through it first, and then we can pick what our favorite and least favorite ones are. So, this one essentially is, you get 5 satellites, you put them out there, and then you have to be within range 1 of these satellites, and whoever has the most ships within range 1 of the current satellite gets the most objective points for that. So let's say I've got 5 satellites and I leave 3 ships by one and 2 ships by another. I get 2 points for that round, unless Cory brings all 5 of his ships in on my 3 ship side, then Cory would get that objective point. You cannot hold them per se, so it's not ones where you can take an action. You don't have to take any actions. You just have to be next to them. And I will tell you, I had one objective where I just took Contrail and circled him around one and said, "Come get him." And I got 3 objective points out of that, but then Contrail died pretty quick. But I mean, I got 3 objective points, for it. But anyway, so that was kind of the that's kind of the gist of what this one is. So, Cory, your thoughts?
So it sounds like a lot of people don't like this one. I'll be honest, this is my absolute favorite. And the reason for it is I think it splits up. One of my things I don't like in X-Wing, and I'd probably take a little bit of heat from this, is I don't like someone flying in a block of X-Wing or a block of formation. That drives me crazy, because I love coming in from multiple angles. I like, kind of trying to create different engagements through different lanes. And I feel like for me, this one splits it up so that you're having to evaluate different engagements across the board. So when I'm looking at this, I say, do I shoot past these, where the group is, and try and create this one-on-one action, on this upper objective on the other player's side? Do I sweep in with 2 or 3 ships and try and hold kind of the center area, kind of scare people away? So I feel like this one makes me really think hard about where my engagements are taking place, but I don't have to lose the capabilities of my list in order to take the objectives. Like, I can still firefight, I can still dogfight freely, but it gives me more to think about of where those engagements take place.
So yeah, so this is my least favorite one out of everything. I hate this one. I think it's dumb, personally. And if I had my way, I'd never play this one ever, personally. Um, I do not like this one. And I don't like it. So I am a swarm player, and I like having my stuff in blocks, and that's how I've ran most of my list. Yeah, it's camping, and so some of it is I feel that the way this works, at least so far, is it does not encourage as much engagement as all the other scenarios. How about that? And I think that's why I probably like it the least, is because you have the ability and you have the two objectives and you force everybody to split up, and there isn't enough firepower unless you concentrate it or have certain types of ships. So this type of scenario, I feel, lends itself to that mid-range list, the 4 to 6 ship list, and ones that have the ability to have multiple interactions and have the ability to have extremely strong output firepower. So being able to shoot protons or shoot plasmas or be able to double tap in some way or throw bombs in some way towards these scenarios highly benefits those type of lists. And that's why I have a harder time with this one. And again, like I said, I could toilet bowl. I didn't win, but again, it was the same thing. I had the same, just like Desla, just like you said, I had the same issue. I was able to score a bunch of points towards the beginning, and then all of a sudden, because my ships were far enough apart, they weren't able to protect each other as much or provide concentrated firepower, and then they ended up dying. And so maybe it's a way to look at this objective and say, do the objective points matter as much in this one? Right?
I think they matter a ton. I think it's one of those things where, for me, and again, it's all going to be about how you like to fly. To me, taking a 5-ship list and having two groups of 2 and then an ace maybe is one of the most awesome ways for me to fly in the game. And so it's perfect for this objective, right? So you've got your ace that's going to bully someone or grab an objective someplace that's out of the way if he needs to. And then you've got, a couple different groups of 2 ships or so taking a few other ones. And I think a lot of it is planning how to get from one objective to the other so that you're not doing K turns necessarily, but I'm going to hit this objective here to grab this one, and then I'm going to try and go up and maneuver to go up to this objective, and my other part of the team is going to cover my back while I do that. And so I think it's just a different line of thinking.
Yep, and I don't disagree. I think that the big difference here is I don't feel that objective promotes some of the engagement over mission points. And here's, so I guess now before we're going to move into list building here for the next half hour in just a second. But what I want to do is I want to talk a little, just real quick about JJ is frozen in time. He's not here tonight, Deslin, just so you know. I think when we look at all of the different objectives and we look at all the different play styles, what we have to do is now you have to rank your list based on what your list will do in each of these different scenarios, right? So in that scenario, your list does benefit that mid list, right? And like Cory said, aces, a 1 ace at least in that list is very, very effective. I would actually almost even argue that multiple, like a true 3-ship ace list in that scenario probably does pretty well. And I would say that because of the fact that they don't worry as much about mission objective points as they worry about killing and outmaneuvering you and scoring the points and then running away to another objective to score the points. And I think that they can do that because you have to break your list up to score points or go and attack them. So if you could corner my Vader that can pattern analyze 4K 3 actions to himself, go ahead. That's fine. If you could get him off the board, then that's a boom. That's 8 points. But if you can't, now you're looking at a bigger issue, right? So I think when we talk about the objectives and we talk about, ace play and we talk about all these different scenarios that we're getting to, one of the things that we should be looking at is how do we categorize win-loss ratios with our list based on these objectives. And this is where I would hope that some community leaders, and I would happily volunteer my time and my life to help this, if anybody would like Tanner's help. But like, my biggest complaint about the way TTT and even the Pink Brain, like the way they record all this data, is there's a nuanced complexity that is not actually being looked at, right? And that's fine. This is a game we play for no money. Like, I mean, I guess I could sell my templates, that I win, right? I mean, they're worth some money, but like, I mean, what did we spend in hotels and food to go to Crossroads, Cory? And I guarantee you, the amount of money we spent to go to Crossroads, we did not get out of that in prizes. Like, I don't even think the top player probably got out of that in prizes. Maybe Adepticon, if you get your Worlds ticket, right, and then you get your trip paid for, okay, hey, that's probably a little different. But that's going to be a 1 in 200 chance that you're going to get that, Only one person's going to get that. So we don't play this game, obviously, right, for a huge financial gain. We don't have 10 grand on the line like they do in Magic. Greg made money. You're right. Greg made money at blackjack tables, but fine. When we go, if Greg comes to Adepticon, maybe we'll all go gambling.
He's going to be there.
Yeah. So there you go, Greg. When you see this or hear this, let's get a gambling crew together. I just want to watch you. I don't want to gamble. I just want to watch you win money. Yeah, I'll sit at the table and play $20 worth of blackjack, but that's about as much as you get out of me. Unless I win a lot of money, then I'll stay. But and Cory, going back to this, like, if we could record a different type of set of data, right? So if we could come up with a community as, here's how we feel this solves this mission point or this objective, and here's where your list rates per se on this. If we had a way of capturing all of that and then being able to analyze it, I think that's where, in my opinion, that's where AMG could go to actually produce future scenarios, right? Because not only are they going to find where some of the cracks are, such as 4 or 5 point B-wings that can throw proton bombs in 3 out of the 5 or 3 out of the 4 objectives and be very successful at launching proton bombs and proton missiles, right? We look at those things and can go, oh, hey, maybe we need to tweak these other few things, and it would help, I think, balance the game a little bit more, in my opinion. And then it helps them, give them ideas on how do you create scenarios that are fairly balanced, right? Because I will admit, going into this, I do feel that the points were balanced pretty well. I won't say that they were amazingly balanced, because we did see some crossover of a lot of different things, but I felt they were a lot more balanced, and there was counters to a lot of what we were seeing, except for Dash. I will never recant my distaste for Dash. Ever.
I'm 100% with you there.
So I know. I don't think anybody at Locals has brought Dash either. So if you're watching this and you're from the local group, please don't bring Dash, because I will not.
We have
not
one guy that loves Dash. Like, I'm pretty sure he has a Dash pillow.
I will not play that guy. So if he comes, he's all yours, Cory.
So
anyway. All right. So you want to get into lists? Do you feel lists at this
some
point?
Good ones.
All right. Well, I have no idea if any of these are good or not, but I'm going to take some of the suggestions that we got. We got some feedback in our Discord, and we got some feedback personally, and then some of the ones that Cory, and even though JJ isn't really here, even though he's in the chat, he submitted a few lists as well.
Okay, where'd you get that first one? Because I didn't see that one.
JJ.
Okay.
I believe this was a JJ list.
Okay. So you're going backwards.
I have no idea. I none of those are in any order, by the way.
Okay.
Just as an FYI. I just pulled them in. I just threw all of them in there. I will tell you, I'm gonna go Rebel. We'll try to stay in order of the factions as much as possible. And I will be honest and say I am not a Scum player. And I only have one Scum list that I found that seemed like it could hold up. I bet you there's some Scum lists out there that can. And I know once the Gauntlet Fighter drops, there will definitely be some Scum lists that can hold up. But for now, Scum's just not my forte. So
yeah, there's a good one in here. So
all right, so this one is an arc with Ibistams. Is that how you say it?
I've never even tried.
All right, Ibistams. Where's JJ? Damn it. And he has Hopeful and Leia. Gina Moonsong with Hopeful, Trajectory Simulator, Blazer Bombs, and And that's foil. 10 nub and Braylon. 10 nub with auto blasters, afterburners, a blazer bomb, trajectory simulator. Braylon with marksmanship, auto blasters, and fire control, cluster mines, and stabilizers. Oh, and afterburners if Braylon didn't need even more. And then Derek in the A-Wing, which I think is the 2-point staple.
Yep.
That's not I don't know what's the name of it. Lieutenant Poe. So
yeah,
you have two 2-point staples in Rebels. So what do you feel is the highlights or the strengths of this list?
I'm not sure if you mean highlight or hell, but one of the two. Tragedy Simulator. To me, I'll just flat out say I shouldn't be in the game. I hate it. But beyond that, I think this is really strong. Being able to throw bombs in the center, kind of protect that center. They're not fast. Nothing in this list besides the A-Wing is fast, and so being able to kind of protect that center while you grab the other things, keep everybody together. You don't have to worry about being flanked quite as heavy, and so I think that's really, really strong. And chat's mentioning afterburners, super fast B-Wings. I mean, that is totally true. You pop Leia and do the 3 bank and afterburners. I guess they can be crazy fast if they want to be for 2 turns, which is pretty cool. Or they could do a hard 1 and boost, which would, or hard 1, I guess it would be the other thing, go really slow. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a strong list. If you get some fast ships behind them, I think they could have a little bit of trouble just being able to pick stuff off. So if you get, an A-Wing swarm or TIE swarm or something like that, I think these B-Wings could go down pretty fast because they don't really have a whole lot defensively going for them. Obviously, Braylon can do re-rolls, but it is still 1 die. But I think it's a lot of beef. And definitely a scary list. So,
yep. And with Leia lowering, it doesn't have to be right. Because I'm trying to think of the red maneuvers. The red maneuvers Istanbul has, or whatever his name is, he has that 4K. So that's being able to 4K, and then each of the B-Wings 2K seems pretty good. So.
And they've got 1 Talons too. The B-Wings do.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about those. I hate those. You know what? Hey, Cory, where is our buddy that used to play B-Wings all the time? This is like his meta right here.
Yeah, Tori?
Yeah, where's Tori?
Yeah, I don't know.
Somebody message Tori and tell him to come back and play with us, because he used to fly B-Wings nonstop.
We played Aces High, and he flew a B-Wing and double tapped Poe to death in Aces High. It was amazing. So, yeah, I think this is a strong list. Me personally, I'll just share that I don't like so much 1 health, so much beef with the 1 health. I think for me, I would probably throw in another ship in here that could give you some mobility. So you have maybe 2 B-Wings in the arc, and then a couple of ships that are flying around. They can do something else. So, but I do think it's really strong. I'm definitely a big fan of Braylon. So, really, really good list.
Yeah. And
I think we're going to see a lot of these at Adepticon, this kind of list.
Well, and I think for an I3, Ibistam is amazing because you don't need Leia all the time. You can roll to try to get rid of your stress as well. So, that's pretty amazing. And Gina can do the same. She can't do the same, but she can, transfer one of her stress tokens to another one of these ships. So you can give 10 up 2 stress and let him, let him just go to town.
So. Yeah, Des in the chat saying drop the arc down to Ezra. Yeah, Ezra is a great. You're talking about, I'm assuming the Sheathipede. But I think Ezra the TIE Fighter can now have a crew as well. So I think you can do either. I don't remember what the points are on them. But that might give you a few more points to spend somewhere else. So,
all right. Next one, we have Wedge with proton torpedoes, shield upgrade, R4. Ibistan again. There you go. That's 2 lists with Ibistan, or however you say that guy's name. Expert handling. Urissa Wren. The Derek in the A-Wing. AP5 in the Sheathipede. And Ezra in the TIE Fighter with K2SO crew, which is very spicy. I like that a lot, actually. And Lieutenant Blount instead of Derek. Oh, I mean, you already have Derek. So yeah, with Lieutenant Blount. So this changes and dumps the B-Wings, but gives you your, here's your ace, right? Here's your extremely aggressive ace. Though I would argue, I don't
know if he's an ace.
No?
No.
I think he is.
To me, Wedge is a hammer that he survives by killing others. So,
all right. For me, I would actually drop plasma torps down to plasma torps because I think those are really powerful, and then add some sort of upgrades into here, or maybe even upgrade this astromech to something different. Again, I think the R3 is underlooked right now. Being able to take 2 locks on things, I think that's extremely underlooked. I mean, can you just imagine Wedge being able to have 2 targets to shoot protons at, or plasmas? Seems good to me. So,
yeah, I think the one thing Proton gives you with scenarios is thinking about that crit.
Yep, you're right. That's true.
And so normally I would 100% agree. Sean from our group mentioned he started running plasma on Wedge, and I was like, "What the crap? He's got 3 attack dice. Why are you doing that?" And then I saw it in action. Was like, "Oh yeah, that's why you do that." So it's really, really powerful. But I do think that crit, 4 dice with a crit, is pretty awesome too. So.
Yep, and it goes back to when we talk about which scenarios do they work in. That crit works really well in the crate scenario, right? And then also really works well when we talk about the scrambling the transmissions, because once you start taking those crits, now you're taking all those cards, and you're not able to do different actions in the same way. So you can lose things that you were never able to lose before.
Yeah.
All right. Next
and
list
by the
I
way,
have.
Sorry, real quick. Ursa Wren on an arc, really, really strong. I've put one together like that too. I think I went with veteran tail gunner instead of expert handling, but really cool. It's kind of like the R3 droid, where you can keep 2 locks, but it gives you that extra action type thing, which is really, really cool. So the reason I went with veteran tail gunner there is if it works out just right, you could potentially get target lock front and back out of your arc. So, but very cool card.
The next one was a list submitted to us by a community member. This is a loaded out Vader with Inquisitor and Seventh Sister. Both the Inquisitor, or both of the V1s have Foresight. And Seventh Sister with a spicy outmaneuver, because Seventh Sister now has 11 points you can play with. That seems pretty good.
Yeah.
Vader has heavy laser cannons, cluster missiles, pattern analyzer, and instinctive aim. And as Greg will point out, and he's obviously not watching, instinctive aim does work. We don't have an official ruling, but based on all the card text we went through on our stream on Wednesday, instinctive aim does work on Vader. No comment.
I was just looking into it because I thought I saw something that it didn't. Somebody else was ruling that it didn't work because it wasn't used to modify the attack. It was a force used to set up an attack. But but I haven't been following it too closely, so I certainly could be wrong there.
Yeah, so the reason we believe that it works is because of where the wording is while you perform a special attack, right? And because of that wording, while you perform, you're in that perform action phase. Therefore,
Sure.
you can spend it to ignore it. And there was a Vader ruling for I'm trying to think of what was it. I don't know if it was Shattering Shot. I think it was Shattering Shot that you were allowed to use. I'd have to go back to our damn stream. It was there you go. It was last resort. It was an article from FFG where they ruled it.
Okay.
So,
cool.
So,
I think the pattern analyzer is really interesting on Darth Vader. It kind of reminds me of what I was looking into with E-Wings as an option to keep R3, which is obviously really powerful on an E-Wing, but also still keep the maneuverability that they have, that they potentially have. Because I always struggled with E-Wings of is it R2 or R4 or is it R3? Because of either super maneuverability or the double target locks. But here on Vader, Pattern Analyzer allows you may not get the evade tokens, but you're still able to get a token when you're doing a 1 or a 2 speed maneuver, or that 2K, I guess, if you really wanted to. But I would assume it's more for the hard turns, making it so that you get an action and kind of set yourself up to get out again. So that's a pretty sneaky upgrade that is really, really cool. So
yeah, and I think the neat part about it is it allows you to do those weird maneuvers, right, that people don't expect.
Yep.
That's the especially if you're behind somebody anyway. I mean, like right there, that just it kind of works really well with that. So
yeah.
The next list is Volt Scarus, Turfiner, Fifth Brother, Pierce Sabak, and Gideon Hask. And you brought this to my attention today. So this is a very different. This is do we call this like a Galactic Empire salad? Is that what this is? Because this is definitely
is that the new one?
Yeah, this is the new one I've never seen before until today.
Sure.
So
I have no idea what it is. I'm still kind of blown away that it did really well. But again, 3 agility can be amazing as long as you're not Sunterfell. But yeah, I don't know. Just a mix of fun ships, and sometimes it's just a weird combo that ends up working really well.
Yep, and we all know Turfiner is pretty good, especially in this environment, right? Because after you perform an action, you can perform a barrel roll or a boost, even if you're stressed, and that's before your auto thrusters even kicks in. So, that's pretty decent. I guess I didn't think about this, but think about it this way: Volt, you take your action to get your charge, which we all thought was stupid. Why would you do that? It's just like a passive sensors, but better. But now, if you think about it in this meta, if Volt comes in and he has nobody around him, you can start shooting with your other ships, and then he can take a target lock if he wants. He can take a focus. He can do all these other crazy things, and he doesn't have to make a decision until he has full board information. And I think that's pretty powerful. I'm a little weirded out that Fifth Brother no longer has missiles. I don't understand why I can't have my homing missile, but this is definitely a very weird, very, very weird heavy laser cannon thing. But I think it's kind of neat to see a change for him come up. And then we all know Pierce Sabak and Gideon are both very decent ships, especially for their point cost. I did not know Pierce Sabak was only 4 points.
Yeah, that's a good deal. And like on Volt, by the way, sorry, go ahead. With Pierce Sabak.
I say with Pierce Sabak, you could fit him in semi AC style list, can't you? Now, like he's now a viable, people were running Duchess, right? But you can now run Pierce Sabak with Vader, and that's 12 points. And then you could throw Soon's here in there for 6, and then the Night Beast. Now I got a 4-ship list. 3 of them are pretty much aces.
Yeah, the one thing with Pure Sabak that's tough, always to keep in mind, is that he has 2 agility. So
Yeah.
that one, anytime I see 2 agility, on a fragile, I can still consider those pretty fragile, although they can take an evade, which is nice. But I was going to say on Pure or Vault, something to think about is he could take his action and then trigger his auto thrusters off of that. So that's pretty tasty depending on what's out there. I think I heard somebody talking about fighting against Kylo, and he could trigger his action and then boost or barrel roll after he takes his action once everything's done. So kind of said and done. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, this is a very different list. I feel like I want to put this on the table. Like, I think this is one that would be beneficial to look into more.
Yeah, and even if it's not this exact list, I think looking at the idea of it, and that's something I really like about the new points drop, is seeing lists like that you just never would have seen before. So I think it's pretty cool.
All right, another list. One of them that you and I were talking about that's a different variation is Leighton Dree, however you say their name, with targeting assist, synced laser cannons, fire control. Leighton is, in my opinion, a steal at 4 points in the tie heavy. Like that's 8 health just right there, for 4 points. To me, that's pretty good. And then on top of that, you get your side arcs. If they're in there, they get re-rolls. And it's not like with Malorus, it's the re-rolls, you take the strain. Doesn't have side arcs. This one, as long as you're good at flying Leighton, this one seems pretty good too. And you get 4 academies and Night Beast, and then Grand Inquisitor, which could be subbed out for anything that's worth 6 points. Or you can add more bloody. You can add 2 interceptors if you want 2 initiative 1 interceptors. You could throw 2 of those in there, all with a hull upgrade.
Yeah, Des, my version of Grand Inquisitor in this one would have Brilliant Evasion, Instinctive Aim, Outmaneuver, Fire Control, and Concussion Missiles. That's a full 17-point build out, but what's nice is Outmaneuver triggers with Concussion Missiles. So that's pretty darn nasty. That ship is just nasty. And then if you don't go after Grand Inquisitor and you go after the Swarm, good luck. That's a lot of dice coming in there. So I think this would be a really fun list.
Yeah, and I think, looking at this and talking through, the different objectives, right? I think in a dogfighting scenario, this does well. No questions asked. I don't think that you have that much to worry about in dogfighting. Because they're almost forced to burn Leighton down. Like you have to get Leighton off the table. And you can't focus on Grand Inquisitor in a dogfight type scenario unless you run them all together on accident. But then in your the other benefit I think is in the crate scenario. Grand Inquisitor does very well in a crate scenario because he's going to run away, and if you decide to chase him, you're going to have a hard time.
And Night Beast is great as well, just because of that double action.
Yep. Go in, take your crate, just go straight through the middle of the board, start turning to the right, to the left, wherever nobody goes. Yeah, I think this list has legs. I think we have to kind of see where it lands with all the bloody beef that we have seen coming.
And then, and you talk about objectives, something to think about with this list too is it's got enough bodies that you can kind of sweep through the board, and actually the ones where you're near, you have to be near something. Leighton counts as 2, which is great, but there's enough bodies there that you can still kind of be in a light swarm, close together, but still hold 2 objectives. And Inquisitor can certainly go grab a 3rd on his own. No one's going to want to mess with that Inquisitor. So he can be defensive or offensive, whichever way he needs to go. So I think this is a super strong list.
Unless you're Ahsoka Tano, then you want to mess with that Grand Inquisitor.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah. That'd be fun.
Oh, that would be fun. Somebody at locals bring a Sokatana. I'll bring this, and somebody bring the Sokatana, and let's have a Clone Wars and after Clone Wars duel.
Yeah, we could bring in. It'd be fun to bring in a bunch of cool force sensitive aces high.
Yeah.
I really like this next list that you've got here. I from 1.0, I loved Countess Ryad. When we used to be able to mix FO and Empire together, love Countess Ryad, and I think I would run Backdraft, and I don't remember all the other ones, but very cool list. Lots of very sneaky stuff with being able to grab. You could grab all 3 objectives with this one, and still have action. So Countess gets her free evade. The other 2, the 7th and 5th, both have force. And Night Beast, of course, has his do a blue action and gets a focus token. So very, very cool list. This is something I would actually love to put on the table. I'm not sure who made this one, but I was looking for some more Empire lists, and I've got somebody at our local group that hates Defenders. So if I can push those buttons, I certainly will. So
I think that's a challenge. I think we need that. I want to see that. This tomorrow. I want to see that.
So yeah, I might. This is a really cool list. So I think I would love to see this go. You grab objectives with Countess 7th and 5th, and on the crate one, I don't think they're going to catch you. You just take evade every turn. So super,
I think
super good.
The only thing I would be very hesitant with 7th Sister and Juke with the hate. I would probably drop the hate if it were me and look at something else. Either putting on like a Brilliant Evasion. Brilliant Evasion is usually really good, and either ion missiles, or you could take like a fire control system or something like that. If you really want the Juke, and I think the difference is we have to see how Juke works with this. Because we have seen how Juke works really well on Defenders, right? It probably works pretty well on 7th Sister too. You know, just thinking about that aspect of it, gives that to you. And then I like the Malice piece here, especially with Auto Blasters. I think those 2 work really well together. I probably would swap out that hate for a couple other upgrades. Or swap out hate and Juke and kind of go back to a different build. I'm not sold on hate, except for on certain ships that can take the damage. You really don't want your 7th Sister taking a lot of damage if you can help it.
Yeah, I think I would probably look at outmaneuver Magpulse on 7th Sister.
You can't do outmaneuver. If you drop Juke, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
And again, I'm not into whoever made this list. I'm sure they've got a plan for it as well that I might not be seeing, but I don't know if they're going to fly the ships together or not. If you're going to spread them out, I think that'd be pretty exciting to look at. I also wonder about ion cannon on 5th Brother.
Yep, that is also a possibility. I don't know. I like the auto blasters with Malice though, because I like the force piece where it forces you, especially if you're going to run them separately and not together. It forces you. Who are you going to go after, 5th Brother or 7th Sister? Right? You know, like let's do battle here, because if you are going to go after 5th Brother, then the auto blasters aren't as effective. But if you don't, guess what? I'm going to come right in behind you, and you're going to have a very bad day, especially with Malice. And it's just the reason I hope Malice comes down in price a little bit. We got to move on, but I like the crit piece. That's part of that, right? And I think an objective play that it works really well. So
yeah, and just real quick, sometimes thinking about, even though I know his ability is, you get to add a crit, which is super awesome, but sometimes I've had to look at ships and say, maybe I want to, use the ability when it happens, but I'm also like more important what the chassis and what the ship can do. So like for me, taking a 5th Brother, like what about Extreme Maneuvers Marksman Auto Blaster? which I know is going to, you have to spend a force to do extreme maneuvers. So you're not going to be able to use his ability, but you can hard one again with auto blasters. Is pretty crazy. So you're still getting that marksman in there, or that crit in there. So sometimes I think with the new X-Wing world that we're in, abilities are awesome that the pilot has, but also not always being stuck in that and saying, hey, let's look for something else we can do. What if the pilot ability was only some of the formula, and we can go beyond that with some other stuff.
Yep. All right. This is sadly the only scum list that was given to me, but this list seems really good too. You have Cad Solus and Joy in Fang Fighters, Sarisu, which is extremely decked out, like the most fully loaded Sarisu I've ever seen. Bosk in a Headhunter, the Z95, and Gamut Key in the Hawk. And Gamut Key has Hondo with Seismics. Bosk has Fearless, Hull Upgrade, Marksmanship, which again, that was a 4-point ship that nobody usually ran a lot of. That now we're seeing. Sarisu with Elusive, Predator, Hull Upgrade, Chill Upgrade, and a Tractor Beam. So that is what, a 6 health, 7 health? That's 7 health now?
6
health. Yep, 6 total health. A ship, which is crazy for an interceptor. That interceptor is probably not going to die very often.
So I will say this is a really cool list. Again, this is something I would experiment with, because I was already looking at Gamut Key, just being able to hold those actions, which I think, we talked about that earlier of how important it is to, if you're going to grab an objective, to still have a token. And I was looking at Kashka Frost with Ahsoka Tano and Veteran Tailgunner, because that fits for 11 points of loadout points, which I think is really cool. But always thinking about how do you get more bodies out there, because I think that is valuable. Lovejoy, a friend of mine ran Sarisu at Crossroads Classic and just wrecked people with it. I'm actually a huge fan of CAD, being able to do that red maneuver and grab double focuses. So very cool list. Somebody's really put together something very cool with this. So love it.
Yep, and I think this list does not excel at any of the objectives, but I think does fairly decent at all 4 of them. I think because of how balanced it is, this list can do what it needs to do for the majority of those scenarios. So,
yeah, I love it. Great job.
Resistance. We have Neonub with Pattern Analyzer, because why not? Because Neonub should just be written off and never be a thing. Daredevil, Overdrive Thrusters, and ZZ with Enduring, Heroic, Advanced Optics, Ion Missiles, and a Hull Upgrade. Tally with Starboard Slash, Predator, Plasmas, Heroic, and Chaos, the best pilot on the universe, with R4, Deadman Switch, Advanced Slam, Targeting Computer, and Kaz's Fire.
Nice.
So I think this also feels like a pretty decently well-rounded list. I think Kaz is your beginning game piece, and for every scenario, no matter which one it is, because Kaz is, again, the issue with Kaz is it's 2 die, but once you if for the objectives you have to be near scenarios with Advanced Slam, I mean, you could just run from one side to the other side of the board and get an objective point, right?
Advanced Slam requires you to have it on your action bar. So I don't believe you could do Advanced Slam for objective actions.
Oh, no, that sucks. Okay. Yep, you're right. It does say on your action bar. Never mind. Well, that was a good thought. That sucks. But either way, Kaz is a powerhouse. You have 2 A-Wings, and you have Neonum Shenanigans, which I don't agree with, but you have Neonum Shenanigans, so.
So just throwing out a couple things. I like the list a lot. Personally, I would pull off Dead Man Switch and put Heroic on Kaz. One, I like to have Heroic on as much as I can with Resistance, but especially in a tournament. So I think that would be really strong to keep those hits off of there as much as possible. And then the other thing I personally love, and I'm sure people they've explored it, but for me, ZZ, this is almost my exact build, except for I run cluster missiles, so I wouldn't have enduring. Having ZZ twice a turn act as 2 ships on the board is unbelievable. If you can pull that off, which I usually do, it is just a game changer when you come in there with being able to wreck people with that. And then the optics is nice because on the second shot, you get that focus token if you spent your target lock already. So really, really good. Another trick just to try out with this one is Commander Poe is pretty cool. I've used him quite a bit in that he can give ZZ an extra action. So she can come into use her cluster missiles with target lock focus, double modded first shot, second shot. She if she doesn't spend her focus, because she has optics, she can change a blank and an eyeball to hits. So it's like just a massive amount of firepower that's heavily modded if she wants to with Commander Poe. So just something to try out. But really cool list. It has that mobility that I talked about, the butt shots, which are great, and lots of. It's got good offense as well, so very strong.
The next list, and I don't remember if this came from you. I don't have any upgrades. I don't know what happened to all my upgrades on this list, though. So, essentially, I had Temin, Wexley, Jop, Karakun, and Lieutenant Bastion. And I'll be honest, I have no idea what upgrades I had originally on here because they're all gone. So, but the idea is to create a essentially like a 4 X-Wing list in Resistance, which in fairness had been pretty good. 3 X-Wings in ZZ is great, or 4 X-Wings is really good too. So we could talk about it, or we could just move on because that's my bad. I don't know what happened to my stuff.
So 4X is always good for T-70s. So
yep. I do think they lose a little bit of power in some of the scenarios because you're down to the 4 bodies. And you do have some restrictions because you can't double reposition as easy. I do think there's a little bit of downside to them, but not as much. I don't know. I think we'll have to test them. So, all right, moving into FO, we have Von Reg with Pattern Analyzer, Daredevil, 2 hull upgrade, or shield hull upgrade, marksmanship. The fattest Lieutenant Hughes I've ever seen with DT-7986, barrage rockets, fanatical, munitions failsafe, and pattern analyzer. Malorus with clusters, and Blackout with Lone Wolf, pattern analyzer, and sensor scramblers. I would 100% right here add the configuration though for sensitive control on Blackout, especially if he's your only ship for it.
See, I'm not a fan of it, so I wouldn't, but I totally understand why. I like to be able to move and think about where I want to be. This list, almost identical, I have in my tabs right now. The only changes I had was I think I moved Pattern off of Von Reg and went to Magpulse for the reasons I talked about earlier. The Hughes, I took Pattern off and put Shield Upgrade just to kind of keep him around longer because he is only 2 agility. And I was debating whether this Malorus or running Ion Missile, Marksman, and Fanatical on Malorus. But 100% very cool list. One, I6 plus 3 I5s. Chris, the last game we played, I had this LeHugh's. This is the LeHugh. I mean, the first 3 ships here were what I flew against you, except for I took out Blackout for two I4 ships.
Yep.
So,
which is this right here.
Yep. Actually, it was an I4, and so yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. The reason I took out Pattern Analyzer is LeHugh's can shoot the barrage rockets out of his butt, and so I didn't ever have a need to be able to flip around like that, just because the SF has a pretty good dial as well. So that was my take on it, but I definitely understand the wanting to. So
28 point list. It's just the different options that you have with this list.
Oh, the one I posted.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. So my thing in this, that talking about it, was the list was looking at it saying what, I was looking for the chat and for you to kind of give some thoughts, because there was a couple ways to go with this. You could choose Blackout or Von Reg in this list, and then obviously drop out Revis. So it was kind of like this. These are my ships that I was looking at, and I'm either going with, I could go with both I6s and drop out LeHugh's, and I think then I have to put Revis in instead of either Scorch or Static. So it was just showing this is kind of how I build lists. For these objectives, is wanting 5 ships. I want 2, heavy aces that are high initiative. In this case, if you want, you can go, everything is I4 and above except for Revis, which is pretty fantastic. So this is kind of what I do, and then I'll set up the point configurator and just kind of pick out which ships I want to do and where do I want to go with it. So and I didn't know what Chap thought. If anyone out there has experience playing these between Von Reg, Blackout, and LeHugh's, this decked out LeHugh's. In fact, this one actually has pattern. This is a later build of mine, but I think I more recently went to shield upgrade because of that. And didn't know if anybody had any thoughts, if they've flown these, had any experiences with the FO. So I'm just starting to get back into them with the new objectives. So.
All right. Personally, I like Blackout better than Von Reg, but that's just because he doesn't die as easily. But in the reality of things, I think in that list, Von Reg does better than Blackout will do as an ace. And I think that's, or I don't know. See, I don't ever run Lone Wolf on Blackout. I always run Trick Shot, but that's just me. But that's because I would run, if it were me, I would run the sensitive controls personally. And I don't like optics on them personally either. But I don't like optics on anything that I take my focus as my action, and then, I spend it for one hit per se. Typically I find that I spend that on defense more often with these guys.
Sure.
But I do like I do think that I would put the sensitive controls in only because what it does is I like to fly into the rocks and then be able to barrel roll and fly around the other side, depending on which way they decide to come in. So if they do have a higher initiative than Blackout, I have that ability to get around them.
Sure. Yeah, I have to try it sometime. And to Des, your point on the chat, that was one thing. I know it's weird to put afterburners on Von Reg when he has boost, but I don't know how many times you kind of get in that weird spot with Von Reg where you want to be able to boost and still do his action. So I was trying to get around that. And the same thing, I've actually run LeHugh's. I've run LeHugh's with afterburners as well. So LeHugh's had Fanatical, Barrage Rockets, DT-798, and afterburners. So it's pretty awesome because he just takes a focus, cranks his way in there with afterburners. It's really a solid, fun build to give the SF a little bit more boosty actions as well. So, yeah, very, very strong.
So I think at this point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and stop for the night. I think
Okay.
because I think the problem is there. I have enough. We have enough. We if we go back to Republic, the problem I had is I could not find enough Republic lists that I wanted to go through, but I think there's too many, and I think that's kind of the big problem. And then when we get into CIS, I have a little bit more of a distaste per se into what I'm able to run versus what the rest of the field is. But I guess we'll see, because one of the CIS lists that I was running was Watt with naked drones, right? You know, and I had fairly decent success with that when I ran them without discords and just ran 8 bodies. And you can fit them, they just can't all be I3s. So, and you don't get Solus 1. That's the downside to Watt. He doesn't get his Solus 1, which is sad. But yeah, I don't know. I think we could spend another 20 minutes on those last two factions. I think Republic's a bigger faction, and I think really Republic almost deserves its own half-hour segment per se, just because they split up the Aether sprites, and now you have you quadrupled the options, right? Because I could run Aether sprites with CLT and Aether sprites with the Delta 7B, right, or Delta 7B Aether sprites in the same list. And get and there's so many combos with those. I don't know. There's a lot that's going into Republic that and I feel like they're making Republic the next Rebel list per se. Not quite as much token sharing, but close.
Yeah, Dez's list looks really good. I've got a couple lists that are similar. You just kind of swap this out for this out, but they always have Barris, they always have Plo. There's some ships it just feels like it's the staple of, and then kind of fill in with 2 ships. You kind of pick 2 ships that kind of mix in there and say which one fits your play style. I mean, it could even be a lat, right? So great options out there. Because in that list that Des posted, you could switch out Obi-Wan for a lat, and have that kind of support if you want to, but having all aces is really great too. I would probably go down to Contrail instead of Click, but I know Click can be pretty awesome. So
I think especially with that R3, which I think when you and I played, that was what was missing in some of my lists, is I was putting the R2 or the R4s on them to reduce their stresses, and in reality, I didn't need to make them more maneuverable. I needed to make it so that he had double locks.
Sure.
Anyway, so there you go. Dez's list on screen. Any last thoughts on objectives and on list building before we wrap it up for the night?
I think the only thing I would say is, I'm sure we're going to get some points updates here and get some clarifications and some tweaks and changes to stuff. But just my big thing is just encouraging people just to keep playing and keep trying, seeing if what we thought in our heads is maybe not what's actually happening on a table once you play enough, and kind of unlearning what you've already learned, type stuff. And and even if things are going to change, I think there's a lot to just figuring out how to gauge distance and some things like that. Like, hey, if I do a 5 boost with a 5 speed with a turn arced boost at the end, will I get that objective? We know objectives aren't going away as a whole, and that's going to be a part of X-Wing as we move forward. So anytime you can kind of look at, hey, this is some early, we're kind of like a group test right now for how things are going to get changed. But knowing how to fly around asteroids, how to get to objectives, when to kind of plan, how you're going to go in there and do that and not get killed. Those skills are going to last throughout, this 2.5 and beyond. And so I would just say I know a lot of us have ideas in our heads, but just try and keep your minds open and keep looking for new solutions that maybe weren't there before, just because so much has changed.
Yep. And I think one of the things we'll start talking about next week is obstacle placement and objective placement, because I think they've changed how we
Yes.
manage to think about things. And I think really that's a good topic to touch on, especially with Republic. Yeah. Deslin, I can't use stealth device in standard. I don't know. So I think on an overall, for me, objectives have been a positive change because it's creating new ways to force me to think. I will tell you, I believe the learning curve, I don't care what anybody says, the learning curve is still there. So when I came in as a new player, there was a learning curve on how do you dogfight? How do you block? How do you do all these things? Hence why I learned how to play swarms, was for the pure fact of the fact that I was getting blocked even by 5 to 6 ships list, which I don't consider a swarm at all. And I was getting blocked and having big issues, as a newer player. So I learned how to play these other swarmy style lists on purpose. I will tell you, going in for the block right now is almost worthless on anything that's higher initiative, because they still get a range 0 shot, and if they have force, they can mod their shot. And I mean, I believe that Mr. Von Reg took one of my ships down to 1 health in 1 turn with a range 0 shot. No knotted dice. It's just dice variance, which happen, right? It does happen. But you take a 4 health ship down to 3 health in 1 shot because, Von Reg, you blocked Von Reg. He got no actions, but oh, by the way, he still can shoot you now.
Yep.
So we have to look at how blocking was. And that's where I spent a lot of my time, is I could block really well and deny actions, and then rely on the effects of my other ships getting something out of that. This new meta is not going to be that, I don't think. I don't think blocking is where we need to go with it. But who knows? I could be wrong. Either which way, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Cory, for stepping in and being JJ and Charles in one.
Thanks for having me.
It was fun. If you would like more information about our Grand Rapids group, let us know. You can, like I said, if you live in the Grand Rapids area and want to join us on Monday nights, we are happy to have anybody. I found out there's a Muskegon group that meets on Thursday nights as well. So I'm probably going to go up there in April and see if we can recruit some of them to come down to Grand Rapids as well, to grow our group even more. With that being said, we will be back Wednesday night with our community streams. You're welcome to join us. If you would like to sign up, message JJ or I in the Discord, and we will get you signed up for Wednesday. Otherwise, you're just going to see me lose to everybody on stream, and I don't know how much fun that is. So, thank you all. We'll be back next week.